All right, I think we can start. I'm Eric Cochran. I work at If This Then That, and we're always building very interesting and very unique Android concepts and ideas. And one of the things we built fairly recently was a floating button in our Do Button app. So this is kind of the story of what I learned in that process, some of the mistakes I made, and hopefully things that will save you time in case you ever make a floating app for work or for personal. So how many people have used an app like Link Bubble or Facebook Chat Heads? Cool. How many people have made an app like that? Cool, all right. Very cool. So Android is a platform for apps that move beyond screens. I think most Android developers have this concept. There's much more to Android than just your standard activity and a series of screens. We have powerful concepts like broadcast receivers and services, and one of the cool things is getting the WindowManager as a system service. So this is much the story of views that are not attached to an activities window. They're attached directly to the WindowManager. And these are real, full-fledged views. You can animate them, you can do anything to them that you can do to normal views. This is kind of in contrast where I saw a lot of people thought, oh, they're just remote views, or like it's just like a widget. But no, you can use custom views, you can do whatever you want, and just add it to the WindowManager. So first things first, there's a permission you have to declare. It's the system alert window permission, not that bad. One thing that I only realized very recently was that in the Android M preview, at least in preview 3, you are not granted this permission for free, first of all. And when you request the permission, it always comes back as denied. So hopefully that gets fixed. If anybody has information to maybe there's something about the system alert window that's new in M, but I haven't been able to track down any information why I always get the denied come back. All right, so adding the views, most basic thing here. We first just get the WindowManager as a system service and have our view, create our view normally. You can make it from XML and use a layout inflator, or you can just create it there on the spot. I set a background color just so I could see it, so it's not just invisible sitting there. Then you have to, when adding to the WindowManager, explicitly set layout params. It won't, the WindowManager will not implicitly make any default layout parameters. Most interestingly, well, so I'm about to get into some of the most common flags. You see a lot of flags here, not focusable, and layout, no limit, and I'm about to get into those. The gravity, you can set left or top, bottom, right. This is going to come in. This is going to be important because the layout parameters have 4 fields that you're going to be mostly using. That's width, height, X, and Y. And X and Y are relative, as you might expect, but might not have thought about. X and Y are relative to your left or top, as in the greater the X value, the farther to the right if your gravity is left, or the farther to the left if your gravity is right. And similar for Y being top to bottom or bottom to top. So let me explain you the common window flags you'll use in the layout parameters. Flag not focusable. Views will not receive focus, means like you're not going to be able to use edit text in there. This is probably going to be what you're going to want to use. You don't typically want the user, if like he has a D-pad or a trackball or an accessibility device, being able to focus on the view. You'd rather the actual content behind the view to be able to get the focus. Flag not touchable. I do not know a valid use case except for maybe custom toasts of some sort. But your touch listeners will not work if you set the flag not touchable. Flag not touch modal means that any clicks, even outside of your view's bounds, will be intercepted. So, excuse me. This is the opposite of what I said. Flag not touch modal is implicitly set when you set flag not focusable, and but if you neither set flag not focusable nor flag not touch modal, the window manager will treat it as if it is a modal, like a dialog, and any views, even outside of your view's bounds that you've added to the window manager, will not be able to be touched. So the only reason you would not use flag not touch modal or flag not focusable is if you actually want to make a dialog that is blocking all UI behind it. The other two are going to be important depending on your use case. Flag layout in screen will always keep your view's bounds in the screen's dimensions, no matter what you set for your X and Y. If you set your X to 10,000 pixels, even though obviously your screen probably doesn't have 10,000 pixels horizontally, the view will still stay in the bounds of the screen. Flag layout no limits is just the opposite of that. They're free to move off screen. In most cases, I would assume that most people want flag layout no limits so that you can do things like have insets and appear that it's kind of off screen. I see that in most apps that use this floating views. So you can do that all from an activity. There's nothing here that requires you to do this in a service, or as long as you have a context, as long as you can grab the window manager, you can add views to it. But most use cases aren't going to really have a use for that in an activity. Most of the time we want something like link bubble or Facebook chat heads, where it is in some service, not necessarily with your full screen window open. So we put it in a service. We started in the foreground because we don't want Android to, we want it to be one of the least likely candidates for getting killed when memory gets low on Android. So we started in the foreground. Make sure you have a valid notification. And of course on Jelly Bean and above, you can set the notifications priority to priority min, which means that it won't show up in the status bar. It will only show up in the notification drawer. So at least it's a little bit unobtrusive and keeps the status bar clean while staying in the foreground. Most of the time we're going to, again, unless you maybe have a custom toast of some sort or a dialog, you're going to want your view to be able to move. So no magic here, just set a touch listener. And the most interesting part here is, again, remembering your gravity, in that you're going to want to subtract from X when you have a gravity right, or add when it's a gravity Y. Touch listener, you get the move event, you can move your view all over your screen and off your screen if you use the no limits window manager flag. All right, so that was the end of the easy part. This is where the tough part really came in, and I had to try a few things to be able to come to some good conclusions and figure out what was going wrong. In our normal daily process with views, we're used to the view being parented, and the parent by default has the clip children attribute set to false. So when we want to scale these views, we don't even think twice, and we can scale it we can scale a view 2x, and it'll scale beyond the view's bounds. It'll because the parent won't clip it. But we set our view in the window manager, and it is not parented now. There is no handy clip children default. Our view is bounded by the layout, what we set for the width and height in the window manager. If we suddenly scale our view 2x, it's going to be clipped. You're only going to see now half of your view. So pause on the solution to that. There are a few more gotchas. I was running this all on Lollipop, and alpha, scale, transformations, and other view properties worked out of the box for me on Lollipop. Turns out KitKat and below, alpha, scale, and transformations do not work when your view is added to the window manager. So I went the long route of making custom views, trying to solve these issues, trying to get back to the clipping issue. Then there's really a much simpler way. The spoiler is just throw it into a parent view. Once your view's parented, those view properties are going to work. This isn't going to solve the scale issue yet, but this is going to solve a lot of those tricky alpha animations that weren't working before. If your parent view really doesn't have any meaning outside of just having to be there to parent your root view, use something light like a frame layout or even an absolute layout. So the scaling issue, we're still getting clipped. Even our parent view still has that fixed width and height. I'm going to suggest two techniques, and the first one I'm going to go into, but then I'm going to talk about what some of the issues are, despite it being probably the most intuitive and still maybe useful for some use cases. The first idea is just to make the root view as large as you would possibly scale your actual core view that you want to scale. In that now your parent view is this large view, like as if our maximum of our core view, if we wanted to scale that 2x, we would just make our parent view 2x, the width and height, and place our core view inside of it. And now when we scale, it's not going to be clipped because it's all inside the parent. So any scaling that's going, so perfect scaling, and the only parts that are clipped are now our margins that we don't care about anyway. The disadvantage is now your view that you added directly to the window manager is now this 2x view all the time. It is now blocking more UI from the user, and worse, because it is now 50% of it is now just margin or padding. It's now intercepting these touch events, and the user doesn't understand why he's clicking on something that doesn't appear to be part of your UI, but it's really because your view is 2 times larger than it needed to be. So here's that in kind of a graphical representation. The gray view there represents the view we added directly to the window manager. The red view is the view we actually cared about, the view that we would want to scale 2x. And so our trick was to make the gray view 2x and then scale so that our red view wouldn't get clipped. But of course, now we're intercepting all of that extra UI space. So we're obstructing the UI. User probably doesn't realize it. There might be a better way. So if you're really scaling and you're not scaling that much, your maximum scale value is not that great. It's not really an issue. The first way works just fine. It's pretty easy to get going. You're only going to run into an issue if you ever want to scale largely. But the more less intuitive but better approach, I would say, would just be manually rescaling the width and the height from the window manager's layout parameters that we set on our root view. Again, every time we update anything in the layout params, again, the four fields that we normally care about are X and our Y and our width and our height. We always need to update the view layout. We need to notify the window manager that this view and its layout parameters have been updated. We do that. Now the problem, this is where it was probably a bit less intuitive. Now the problem is that we've doubled our width and height, but our X and Y has stayed the same. So if our gravity was left and top, we've now just scaled to the right and to the bottom. Not exactly what we were really hoping for in our fancy scale animation. So scale radially, just evenly distribute that. The only trick is you have to remember to do this in your animation. Scale, probably, if you want to scale radially, you probably want to do half to the left, half to the right, half to the top, half to the bottom. And then now we've really solved most of our issues. We parented our view to get view properties working on less than lollipop, and we've solved our clipping issue with scaling. So now the important part is to remember to remove your views when appropriate, because you are going to leak your views to the window manager if you don't remember to remove them manually. This is probably going to happen in your on-destroy of a service. If you put them in a service, could happen in other forms depending on your use case. But do remember to remove them. So some general tips that I found really useful: define your bounds from the onset. This is especially helpful when you have, like I said, when you have when you've set that window manager flag to no limits, and because you want some kind of inset, when you define your bounds, then you can easily bound check when you're in your touch listener when you are moving that view, and make sure it doesn't continue farther off the screen than you desired. And definitely look into VIEW.GETLOCATIONONSCREEN. Especially when you have views that you don't want to collide. You want to give kind of the illusion that they're all in the same field, and you don't. You might have multiple of these views that you don't want to collide, or probably the larger use case, you have some other view that you've attached to the window manager that is like your removal area that that you do want it to collide with, and just getting the location on the screen typically ends up to be one of the easiest ways of detecting that collision, since they're all in the window manager in the first place. Adding a velocity tracker definitely makes your movement feel much smoother. In the case of most apps that will do this, They use some animation to snap to the side of the screen to get the view out of the way of the user. And this animation is going to feel much better if you use a velocity tracker in your touch listener. It's not hard to use. Definitely look into the API, but it'll make your movement feel much smoother. Yeah, so go try it. Android is far beyond a platform for screens, and this is something that really makes people feel like you've built something unique for Android, because you have. Any questions, especially from people that have done it before? I'd love to hear like thoughts and other ideas and tricks that you've had. Okay. Yeah. So translations, have you parented the view? Okay, I will look at it afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. Great. So yeah, see me after, always available. And go try it out. It is in our Do Button app. We at IFTTT also have made this. Thank you.